Hey everybody, welcome to G for G here on YouTube. Today we're going to do my probably not very waited for review of the Captain Marvel movie, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, considering I talked about it before the movie actually came out. Today's background soundtrack is brought to you by the Neo OST in honor of the fact that right now I'm playing the shit out of Sekiro, and I'm just choosing an older soundtrack for the background of the video while we talk about Captain Marvel. If you're not playing Sekiro right now, you really should be. But that's just an aside. That's part of the reason why I haven't done this video yet. So, about a month ago or so, I did a video concerning what was happening with Brie Larson prior to the Captain Marvel movie, and I dealt with it from a public relations perspective. The reason why I did that is I originally was going to be looking at getting jobs in the PR field. That's what I did when I was in college. I was a communications major, and I was looking at eventually going into public relations related jobs. The fact that I wound up over in IT was actually kind of an accident. It was not really intended. So when everything was happening with Brie Larson's comments about the movie A Wrinkle in Time and what she was saying there, and also what she was saying about the press junkets prior to Captain Marvel, that kind of stoked a public relations perspective in me, and that's what I talked about prior to the movie coming out. And since that time there's been a lot of very chaotic stuff concerning the Captain Marvel movie, and there's been two very different schools of thought in regards to the movie and people's experiences with seeing the movie and everything. So before I get into my honest opinion of the Captain Marvel movie, obviously there will be spoilers in this one. It's been out long enough. I will kind of give you a warning before I talk about spoilers, but this first part will not contain any spoilers. So, to understand where I'm coming from when I watch Captain Marvel, I'm going to give you the background on it. This way you have context. So the Captain Marvel specific context was I was receiving two very different schools of thought in terms of what my inner circle was saying about Captain Marvel. I had the one side of friends that thought it was the best thing ever, thought it was a great movie, were saying things like, oh, I saw this movie twice, I dragged my wife to it, she's not a comic fan, she loved it, just rave reviews, the best thing ever. Actually, there were three schools of thought, I'm sorry. Best thing ever, blah, blah, blah. Then there was it wasn't very good, she isn't a good actress, she was too deadpan, she was too stiff. The plot jumped around, the theater was empty, I had the theater to myself, why was it empty on opening weekend? And that falls into what you saw a lot of on Twitter. And then there was this third set of opinions, and these were coming from actual people that I knew personally who had seen the movie, and they were just saying it was like a B, anywhere from a B minus to a B plus movie. It was good. It wasn't the best thing they had seen. It wasn't the best Marvel they had seen, but it was okay. And that's where things were prior to me seeing it the weekend after opening weekend. So that's the date that I saw it, not this most immediate weekend, but the one before. Now, my general background when it comes to movies is I don't tend to review movies particularly negatively. I just typically do not have super harsh opinions when it actually comes to the movies that I see. I don't know why it happens. it just kind of does. There's very rarely a movie that I see that I come out of it and I'm like, Jesus Christ, that was fucking awful. I just, I don't think that way very often when it comes to movies. Now, granted, that's because I've never seen a U-Bowl movie, but okay. Um, I also tend to like all of the Marvel-related movies, whether it's MCU or outside of it. And I tend to like ones a lot of other people just don't consider a good movie. Like, I'm okay with Iron Man 3, but I've seen enough of it lately, I don't need to see it again. Iron Man 2, I've seen enough of, I don't need to see it again. I haven't seen Iron Man 1 in a while, I could stand to watch that again. I liked Black Panther a lot, I thought it was great. I liked Infinity Wars a lot. I've watched both of them in the home after seeing them in the theater. Saw Deadpool 2 in the theater, just recently watched it on DVD with a girlfriend. Liked Venom. I'm okay with Spider-Man 3, even though I've seen it enough lately that I don't want to see it again. I was okay with Dark World. Again, there's another one I don't really want to see again, but I like Ragnarok. I could stand to watch Ragnarok again. The first Thor, little over that one now at this point too, just because I've overwatched it, but I like the Marvel movies. I even like some of the Hulk movies that have considered, kind of trash and everything. So, I knew I was always going to see this film. I knew both of us were going to go see it. We typically see our movies at an Alamo Draft House. However, for this one, I wanted to see it in a different one called Rollywood, which is another eat and watch movies type of place, just like Alamo, but different cuisine, closer. I had never been to Rollywood. I just wanted a basis of comparison to Alamo Draft House. When we got to Rollywood, we saw a 6 o'clock show projected to end at about 8. It was packed. My theater was definitely very full, but it had a ton of kids in there, and I think part of it was there was a kid's birthday party going on, and that probably amounted to at least 3/4 of the kids there. It was generally a pleasant experience. They weren't exceptionally noisy. A kid in front of me had light-up sneakers, and he would kick the wood in front of where he was sitting to activate the sneakers, which was a little distracting. But overall, a pretty decent experience. The food was okay, but Alamo Drafthouse beats it in terms of quality, but not necessarily selection. Rollywood had a very good selection, even if it wasn't the greatest. So the movie experience was okay, and the theater was definitely pretty packed filled. So I had a lot of people who say their theaters were empty. Mine was definitely full. That ends it for the actual background stuff. So this is where I'm going to talk about the movie and where spoilers may come in. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe you want to stop here, but I mean, you'll probably know all the things I'm going to talk about. You've probably heard them. So overall, I actually liked the movie. A lot of people expected me, based on what I had been posting, that I was going in with preconceived notions and was going to go in and not like it because I seemingly wasn't going to want to like it. To explain that, I have friends I have exposed to me on my social media, I should say, both sides of the camp. I had people who say they didn't want to see it because of the things Brie Larson had been saying. I knew of a lot of people who had seen it and thought it was not really that good. But then I also had aggressive defense of the movie. I had those kinds of people who were like, they were the excessive labelers. Oh, if you don't like this movie, you are this, you are that, you are an ist, you are a anti-feminist, you are a misogynist, you are not believing in feminism. Everything was an ism or an ist if you didn't want to see this movie or you didn't like the movie. And I saw comments like, oh, the only people who don't like this movie are sweaty neckbeard virgin incels with mushroom dicks. And like, I was watching that happen and I was getting more and more upset and frustrated that people would dare to defend a fucking movie by insulting non-offensive opinions. So there were people who were like, I don't think she's a good actress for it. She was too plain, or her acting and emotions were too plain, and blah blah blah. And people would just assault them for that opinions. And I don't mean people posting, I don't want to see the movie because Brie Larson is a woke SJW. They weren't saying that. They were saying they didn't want to see the movie because they didn't like the trailers, they didn't look good, or they were giving negative reviews after seeing it, but they were honest opinions. They were not aggressive opinions, but I saw way too much aggressive defense of the movie, and I know of a lot of people in a semi-close circle of mine that just were like doing the incel thing out the fucking ass, and it really pissed me off when I saw that, and I called them to task every time they did it, and I defended people to have a right to voice their opinion on the movie. And that's where a lot of people are like, oh, it sounds like your mind is made up. And I'm like, it's not. I'm going to see the movie, that is definite, and I'm going to give it an honest shake when I see it. I'm just tired of people defending this movie as if it is a paragon of virtue, that you must like this movie, otherwise you are a bad person. And that's what was happening, and I think a lot of you watching this video have probably seen or experienced that. So when I did see it, I actually, I give it an A minus. I really thought it was a pretty solid movie. And I was viewing it from the perspective of, okay, like, I've heard that Nick Fury saves the film. I heard that the cat saves the film. There's interesting things that go on with the cat and everything. And then you watch it, you find out it's a Flerken, and you see what it does. And I jokingly with my girlfriend now, like, oh, we have to call our cat a Flerken now. I really thought overall the movie was good, and I certainly do plan on, when it comes out on home media, either owning it or at least watching it one or two other times, and would certainly see it on TV and cable when it makes it there in the future. Would I like get a day one DVD edition of it and be like, oh my god, fap, Brie Larson and Captain Marvel's out on DVD today, yay, stop what we're doing, we're going to Target to buy this. Like, no, it's not gonna go that far. But like, maybe if I see the notification that it's gonna hit Amazon in 2 weeks or something, maybe I might buy the Blu-ray as a pre-order. I don't think it was that bad, and I do have that capability to separate what Brie Larson was saying in real life from this actual movie. One of the comments that I received from a coworker of mine and a close friend, somebody whose opinion I do listen to, was that, oh, the message is going to hit you over the head in this one. He said, like, my girlfriend was angry at seeing this film because the message beats you over the head. I don't necessarily agree with that. I thought the message was there if you knew about it and were looking for it. But for the most part, for 7/8 of the movie, I didn't think the message was that heavy-handed. The part that it really struck me where it was at the end, and here's a spoiler, there is a fight between her and Jude Law's character. Jude Law gets out some weapons, and then he's like, wait a minute, he throws them down, and he's like, okay, he wants to basically have a hand-to-hand fight with her, and he's like, you need to control your emotions. If you can fight me and control your emotions and beat me, you'll have made it. And she just punches the shit out of him, knocks him into a rock, and looks at him and walks up to him slowly. And in my head, I'm going, I know it. I know what is going to happen in the next second. I feel it. I will shoot myself in the eyeball if it doesn't happen. And she walks up to him and says, I don't need your permission. And I was like, I knew it. Like, I knew exactly that was going to be what she said. To some people, that is the message, quote unquote, or the heavy-handedness of the message. That part I thought was highly predictable because somebody told me the movie's going to clobber me over the head with a message. Had I not heard that phrase, had I just woken up from a 50-year coma like Encino Man or something like that, maybe I wouldn't have seen that coming, but I certainly knew that that line was going to happen. I didn't really think the message was overwhelming. Nor do I think women should look at this movie as like this is a giant empowerment movie, like, yay, Brie Larson, she's the champion for women everywhere. No, I don't think this movie nor her performance deserves to be iconified. I think Wonder Woman is better for that. I think Ripley in all of the Alien movies is better than that. I think Descent as a horror movie is better than that. I think there are a lot of other movies that you can go to that are better if you want your really strong and powerful female empowerment out of the movie. If you look back on Captain Marvel when you're done with it, you do notice, like, it seems like all the songs were basically girl bands from the 90s. And for me, I enjoyed the movie because the 90s have, for me, become kind of what the 60s have become for my parents' generation. Like, the 90s are now so far gone that they are literally nostalgia at this point. In my head, the 90s were yesterday, and I love the 90s. I love the music. I love the accessibility to different genres and everything. So I like that the movie took place in the 90s. The fact that she crashes into a blockbuster. The fact that she was supposed to blow the head off of a Jim Carrey The Mask cutout. Here's why. Spoiler. When she lands in the blockbuster and she blows off the head of a cardboard cutout, it was supposed to be Jim Carrey's The Mask because he had a green mask in that movie. So it was meant that she was going to mistake him for a Skrull. Well, they couldn't get the rights to it, so it became True Lies by James Cameron. And actually, again, this is where the message comes in if you know about it. James Cameron is a dark spot in James Cameron's history. There is a lot of not very nice to women things that happened in James Cameron True Lies, because of the fact that like Schwarzenegger makes Jamie Lee Curtis do the sexy dance thing, and she thinks she's, you know, essentially like sort of being enslaved to do this mission. Two spy-ish people are like fighting for her. Alicia Dushku was supposedly abused on that set, and she was very young at the time. So True Lies is a very, very dark moment in James Cameron's history, which is why it's never like been remastered or talked about. So her blowing the head off of Schwarzenegger's cutout from True Lies may be intentional, maybe accidental. It has a bit of symbolism to it that it's there if you go looking for it and you know the background, but if you're just watching the movie, you're like, oh, that's period specific. That's a 90s movie. That makes a whole lot of sense. A lot of people said, oh, you know, when you see the movie, you'll know why she looks deadpan and stiff. It's the inhibitor chip. No, actually, I think that's bullshit. I think the inhibitor chip was only about her powers and really didn't have anything to do about her emotions or her acting ability. I didn't think her acting ability was as bad as people thought, nor did I think it was as bad as the trailers made it seem. However, there were definitely moments where I thought she didn't truly internalize what she would actually feel in that scene if she was living it rather than acting it. There were a couple points where basically I think she could have acted facially, you know, what her face looked like or what she would actually do in the moment. Her dial was at a 6 and it should have been like an 8.5 to a 10. And there were several lines that she delivered that I thought should have been more emotional and had more power to her rather than just a slightly screwed up and scrunched up face. Like, I'm not saying she's like Kristen Stewart bad, which is what the trailers to a lot of people made it look like. But I think she could have internalized it a little bit more. I'm very fucking happy that Ronda Rousey did not become Captain Marvel like was originally thought of many years ago, that she was maybe going to go out for that role. the rumors that Captain Marvel was going to be the most powerful thing in the MCU, which started several years ago, that's probably going to be true. I really had hoped out of the movie that how she plays into Endgame is that she was sent away from her 90s thing and she comes back with Adam Warlock in tow. Like, that's what I was hoping the page from Nick Fury was going to be, was like, hey, Captain Marvel, help. And she comes back not as the big savior herself, but rather she comes back with Adam Warlock, who does the saving. Don't call me misogynistic. Don't call me anti-feminist for that. That's kind of what I would expect, knowing the general comics of it. And knowing Adam Warlock's power levels compared to Captain Marvel, at least classic Captain Marvel, that's what I believed would happen. We're probably not going to see that based on the end credits, and what we're seeing in the trailers for Endgame with Thor and her in street clothes and the hammer and the no flinch and everything like that. So yes, that expectation was shattered. Overall, I thought it was a really good movie. People complain about the way Nick Fury lost his eye. I kept wanting more out of that. Again, spoiler, the Flerken scratches his eye, and it hurts for a while, and he's like, oh, it's okay, but then he has, like, the total patch, and the eye is definitely messed up. I wanted more out of that plot. I'm like, okay, how did a little scratch get his eye? Is it infected? Did he get some alien bacteria? Is there, like, some creepy cat jizz that got in his eye that, like, acid eroded his eye? Like, how did the scratch do that? Give me more. Like, give me something that seems more powerful than Fluffy nicked his cornea and now he loses an eye. And that's really how they played it out, unless I just missed it. But I expected more out of that. Like, I knew the cat was going to do something, but I really thought it was going to be way more than that. I thought Bree's chemistry with Samuel Jackson was very good. I don't think it saved the movie, because I don't think the movie needed saving from something like that, but I thought it was one of the high points of it. I thought Goose definitely was a high point of it. People who said Samuel Jackson and the cat would be a high point were definitely right. But I don't think it was nearly as awful as it could have been, or as I maybe thought it might be going into it. So I'm happy I saw the movie. I'm happy that my girlfriend and I went and saw it. I'm happy that I spent money on it. I wish the dinner was overall a little bit cheaper. The tickets were a good price, but the dinner, after it all, and a drink or two, was a little on the expensive side for the quality. But okay, overall, I'm not going to complain about Captain Marvel. I'm definitely either going to own it or watch it when it comes out. You know, I give it not an A or an A+. I give it an A-, but to the people who gave it a B or a B+, I think you're well within your rights to do it. I think if you have decided you don't want to see the film because of how Brie Larson acted prior to it, hopefully I didn't spoil it for you with the spoilers and everything, but if you were on the fence about seeing it, or you didn't want to see it because of the fact that you thought Brie Larson was getting a little too aggressively woke prior to it, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't go and see it. I think you really should, especially if you are a fan of Marvel movies. I think it is definitely worth it. I think it's worth your time. I think it is worth a standard movie ticket if you can. I mean, I'm not saying it's worth the $58 overall that we had spent for it, but you know, for the most part, I do think it was a good film, and I think it was worth seeing before Endgame comes out. Could this movie have done really, really well if potentially Endgame was not right on the heels of it? Maybe. I mean, let's be honest, this thing was not the end-all be-all of movies, nor was it the end-all be-all of MCU movies. I thought, in terms of stepping outside of a standard white guy comic thing, Black Panther was better. And I think if you want to look at progression or progressive MCU movies, definitely go to Black Panther more than Captain Marvel. I feel it's not one of their strongest outings, and let's be honest here. This movie in the MCU, it has done well for movies this year, 2019. But within the MCU, it is only 18th place so far when compared with other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Well, I take that back. It's 18 in Marvel movies overall, but it's 13 in the MCU, which really, let's be honest, this is not gold medal worthy over here. So, to the people that hail this thing as one of the best movies in the Marvel history, or even the MCU history, the facts do not support that. Opinion is an opinion. You can have that opinion, and that's great. You can also have the opinion that this movie sucked, or that she wasn't a good actress, or that it wasn't worth your $20 of tickets and popcorn and a giant fucking tub of Sprite or something like that. You have every right to have that opinion, and nobody should take that away from you, whether it's positive or negative. And if you have a negative opinion and you run into those people who tried to label you for that negative opinion, tell them to shut the fuck up. You have every right to think what you want to think about for the movie. If you didn't like her as an actress, great. If you thought the movie was B grade or high C grade, also great. And point out the facts to that person. Like, okay, you think it's so great, then why is it 13 in the MCU and 18 in Marvel movies? I think you deserve every right to defend yourself, and if you love the movie and you want to see it 5 times and spend $20 a pop for $100 overall to see it 5 times, also great, more power to you. I do think it is a good movie, especially think it's a little bit of a better movie than maybe initially thought of, but I don't believe this should go down in the iconic annals of movie history as the best thing since sliced white bread. So, there you go, guys. Coming up on the channel, probably going to be talking about an April 1st announcement for Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. Maybe a review and some tips and tricks on Sekiro, because it's pretty good. I do believe Marvel Strike Force is going to have Alliance Wars pretty soon. And I really should do a video on the updates here in Marvel Future Fight with the costumes and the new characters, but we'll see. It's been a little busy lately. So that's it for me, guys. Let me know what you thought of my review and my opinions on it, and we'll discuss it down in the comments. Peace out, everybody.